I'm Mark Gagan and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise-scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. As an insurance journalist, sometimes I think we in our profession must be a leading indicator for the industry. When we're breaking news, it certainly feels that way. But at other times, it often feels like we're a lagging indicator. Today's podcast is a case in point. From about 6 years ago, the insurance media picked up on a long-term trend and told its story. The story was that transacting reinsurance within the Lloyd's market was something that was on the wane. Somehow Lloyd's had lost its attractiveness and its market share was in major decline. Indeed, perhaps terminal decline. But no sooner had that narrative become commonplace, did events make us look somewhat foolish. Today's guest is a prominent leader of a resurgence of the use of Lloyd's as a platform for building a reinsurance business. Cathal Carr is CEO of Oak Global, a new business underwriting global reinsurance and retro from within the Lloyd's platform. Before founding Oak, Cathal had a stellar career with Renaissance Re, spanning 2 decades, so his reinsurance pedigree is impeccable. In this podcast, we get to the heart of what Oak is all about. But as we do, we quickly uncover some long-term reinsurance demand trends that Cathal believes will drive his business and the reinsurance sector long into the future. Cathal is highly regarded among his peers and is representative of a new generation of insurance leadership now breaking through and setting up its own businesses. As such, our discussions around how to design and attempt to future-proof a new reinsurer in the age of cloud computing and nascent AI are fascinating and highly recommended listening. So, listen on for an exceptionally well-rounded interview with the founder of one of the market's newest and most exciting young businesses. Enjoy the podcast.
Carl, welcome to the Voice of Insurance.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a great pleasure to be here.
We're sitting here in London in your office. For anyone who doesn't know you, been in the industry quite a long time, but if they don't know you already, why don't you run us through your career to date, get us right up to speed on where you are. Let's start with telling us how you got into insurance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I grew up in Dublin City, and my background is actually more mathematics, physics-based. I studied engineering in university at Dublin City University.
What kind of engineering?
Electronic engineering.
Wow.
So I entered the industry. It was fortuitous, really, when I think back to it. I saw an advert for a risk analyst in the Irish Times newspaper at the end of 2004, and I was hired by RenRe in their Dublin office back then.
What made you apply?
That is a great question.
I don't think I would have applied for it, because I want to be cool.
Yeah, I think the way the advert was positioned, it was around, are you interested in risk modeling? Are you interested in travel? The way it was positioned.
So it was nicely sold.
It was nicely sold. And in that first interview, I met with somebody I'm very grateful for today, Ian Brannigan, who gave me my first start in the industry. So he hired me in the Dublin office where I spent 4 years there as a risk analyst. And then in 2009, start of 2009, I made the decision to move to Bermuda. So I moved over to Bermuda to become an underwriter for RenRe. I did the classic expat thing where I said, I'll go for 2 years, and ended up spending 13 years. And it was an incredible experience, both personally and professionally. On the professional side, I took on the role of global head of property catastrophe. So I managed RenRe's global property cat book there for a number of years.
That's the star job, isn't it? I mean, that's what it's known for. So
yeah, it was a great honor to have that role and to learn from so many great people in that business. And after 13 years, we made the decision, my wife and I, we got married. We had our 3 kids over there as well during that time. And we made a decision to move back to Europe. So I took on the role of Chief Underwriting Officer of Europe for Ren, with an additional role of Global Head of Ren's Climate Strategy. I then decided to leave in 2023, which was a difficult decision to make, but embark on the journey to create what now is Oak Global.
Yeah, it's hard to leave RenRe, I would say. It's a really good company. So you must have had a really good reason to leave. So tell us about Oak Re, the Oak Group. What's it all about? I mean, what was the idea that was strong enough to make you think, right, I've got to go and do this?
I suppose from a personal ambition standpoint, I always thought that there would be a point in time where I would look to start a business. And in terms of what really makes me tick, as I think about what are the areas within my roles in the past that I've really enjoyed, it's been on the build side and in terms of building businesses. And I knew at some point in my life, we've only got one chance and we've only got one career. And at some point I wanted to back myself to begin and start a business from ground up. But I suppose there were three underlying macro reasons which I felt really validated that timing. The first one was around the rating environment. So from 2017, if we think about that period, which maybe was the bottom of the market within the reinsurance space, we had a long period with lack of activity and significant decreases in rate and return. And from that point in time, we talk about the reinsurance reset in pricing 2023, but really it was a steady climb from 2017 with the compounded rate increase over that time being over 100% for US treaty business. So it was a very healthy rating environment to engage and try to start a reinsurance business. The second piece critically was around the Lloyd's opportunity as we thought about it. And with Lloyd's going back maybe 20, 25 years, there was a point in time where close to a third of a reinsurance placement would have been placed in the Lloyd's market or in the London market. Over that time, for various reasons, that decreased significantly to the low teens at a certain point in time. So when we look to engage and build a Lloyd's-based business, a syndicate at Lloyd's, we felt that the opportunity was there to bring that leadership to the market. And it was aligned as well at that point in time with what Don, Rachel, Patrick, and the broader team were looking to do. So the third reason then was conviction around the core risk pillars that we're focused on in terms of the products that we provide. So we've identified 4 pillars of risk that we feel will really drive the risk management landscape globally over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. And they're climate risk, technological risk, geopolitical risk, and economic risk. So conviction around the consumer-driven demand in those areas that's present today, but also we believe will grow over time. That was really the genesis to start the business. Our vision as a business is to be a global leading risk partner. And really, what would we like to be known as? I suppose it's a client-focused solution provider with market-leading risk and underwriting expertise.
Right. So if you want to get into a class, the reasons for being in those 4 pillars is that the demand takes care of itself. Is that part of the attraction, to know that there will be eternal demand for that product? So therefore you can price it. Therefore you don't have to worry about there being sort of demand falling off a cliff at any particular moment, suddenly realizing, that the pricing is going to have to go south as well. Is that the core part of the strategy, like to sell a product that people want for a start, that people really want and they're going to need more of?
That's certainly a key part of it. And the ability to have that demand there to provide those solutions for clients is a critical part. But also those areas are areas in which risk is evolving, and the ability for us to bring risk expertise to understand those risks and ultimately then generate attractive returns for investors in those areas is something that we feel is very much present in that space.
Because you can really add the value.
Yeah.
Because there's the real problem. And if you can solve the problem, let's hope that you can solve the problem. That's the real challenge. I was probably still part of that journalistic community. We were picking up on that narrative of, Lloyd's London's not really the place to do reinsurance anymore, kind of head scratcher. Don't really know why. I remember sort of writing or editing very long pieces about all that, the sort of navel gazing that we get up to in London. And, journalists are sort of probably responsible for stoking half of that anyway. But it sounds like your experience is completely different. It sounds like it was relatively easy. Or was that just because it's you?
Well, no, I definitely wouldn't put it down to me. I mean, it's been a massive collective effort. But maybe stepping back and thinking about the launch of the business, there are 3 areas to it. Number 1 was obviously Lloyd's application process, and I'll talk to that now. The second one was the capital. And then the third piece, most importantly, was the talent and the team. But from a Lloyd's standpoint, the engagement with Lloyd's, we had an extremely positive experience from. There are a number of steps in the new syndicate application. So you step through an initial triage step through to Business Opportunities Committee, the BOC, through to CPG, Capital Planning Group, EXCO, the Executive Committee, and then through to the Council of Lloyd's.
Yeah.
So it is a thorough and rigorous process, but it's one that we felt was extremely responsive and efficient. We needed a huge amount of preparation to step into the triage. So that was probably 3 to 6 months in the making to get to that stage. But once we were engaged in that process, it took us less than 3 months to go from the starting point to the finish point. Since we've launched the business, the Lloyd's experience in terms of some of the success that we've had to date has been absolutely pivotal. So critically, the ratings within Lloyd's over the past year and a half, 2 years, we've seen AM Best upgraded to A+, S&P upgraded to AA-, which for a starting business to have those ratings, and also for insurance buyers to be able to look to Lloyd's and have that easily go through internal security committees, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, there's no debate. Because I suppose, yes, the alternatives, you can only have A- from AM Best only, and that's it, isn't it? So again, the security committee can have something to debate at that point, whereas if it's AA- from S&P, A+, AM Best, there's no question really, is there?
It was a huge advantage. And critically, the Lloyd's market, I would say in terms of the talent in the Lloyd's market that we've been able to attract to the business, the broader ecosystem in terms of the clients that are based here, but also the distribution partners, that was a key element to our success. So we feel Lloyd's is a great platform to launch and to grow a reinsurance business. The one thing that is mentioned is around costs in the Lloyd's and the London market. If we think about efficiency maybe from two lenses, the first one being around capital efficiency. Capital efficiency in Lloyd's is very attractive, but more importantly, the capital flexibility. And maybe we'll talk a little bit around that in terms of the ability to bring in different investors. In terms of operating costs, then there are additional charges in terms of doing business at Lloyd's. You have additional brokerage from a wholesale perspective, but that does result in great access to risk. The additional charges then within Lloyd's framework itself, as we think of managing agency, it does provide a very strong governance framework, controls framework, risk oversight that's really beneficial for a starting business. And it's something that we feel has been certainly additive to our success.
So you can evaluate it and say, well, yes, I'm getting what I pay for, I'm getting quality.
Yes, absolutely. And we've had really strong engagement from the initial conversations with the Lloyd's leadership team, and we're very grateful for the trust that they've put in us.
Are we about to celebrate or just celebrated first anniversary?
Coming up to it now, yes.
Just coming up.
Permission to underwrite on November 25th of last year.
Right, that's really close, really close. Yes, so where have you got up to so far in terms of how many people you've hired and what sort of GWP you're projecting?
I suppose maybe as we think about that permission to underwrite date on November 25th.
Presumably that was permission for 1/1.
That was permission for 1/1. And we'd obviously put an ambitious business plan of $300 million for gross written premium for that full 2025 year of account. And we had that obviously relief and celebration of having permissions and having the capital in place, but that very quickly moved to acknowledging that there was only 5 weeks left in the year and we really needed to deliver a portfolio. And that overarching concern is, will clients and brokers want to engage with us? You know, we have conviction in our value proposition, but there was always that level of doubt lingering there. But we're absolutely delighted that the engagement, the showing from the market was absolutely incredible. We were ahead of plan post 1/1. So our average authorized to signing percentage has been just over 60% throughout the course of the year. And that dynamic resulted in us achieving a greater business plan than we were expecting even at the start, at the profitability targets that we would have looked at. So we went back to Lloyd's mid-year and looked to increase that to $400 million to our investors as well. And we've just completed that underwriting now for the year. Obviously, we're switching gears now, looking at 2026. Within that $400 million, we have about 400 clients in the portfolio. So really, really proud of the spread there globally. That's split approximately 50% property lines, with the remaining 50% split across various specialty lines, including marine, energy, terrorism, cyber, credit, and also some climate innovation lines such as parametric and green technology performance guarantee. So we're extremely proud of that portfolio that we've been able to put together. In the cash flow model that we had for the business, we didn't expect there to be a California wildfire in the second week of operation.
Not unhelpful, yes.
Yeah, but it's something that we were prepared for. And it's something that we were able to manage and service those clients and pay claims, which we were very proud to do. On the team side, you know, obviously I talked about talent, and it's certainly something that is the key differentiator and the key reason for our success so far. The people that have come on board in the business, we've got a head count of 50 people today. So that's 20 underwriters.
That's one a week.
If only if it was staggered in that way. But yeah, we've got 20 underwriters. and 30 staff across various functions: capital, risk, finance, and operations. So we're very proud of the team that we've been able to put together. One of the key things that we're focused on in hiring the team and building the team was to have a diverse background of individuals from different companies. We have a maximum of 2 people coming in from any other company in terms of where we've hired from, which we feel is a real positive in terms of trying to build a truly different company. And it's something we're very proud of.
It's just like the Ark. You and Noah filling up the Ark.
Yeah.
2 by 2, they came in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That gives you diversification of talent, doesn't it? Because they're all going to have slightly different ideas. Things that were done differently in different organizations. You will have the experience of all of them.
Yes, exactly. I mean, as much as we like to think we're open-minded, we do have our biases in terms of how we've always done things. So it's a really refreshing environment to have people come together with different perspectives and try to create something truly different.
So you're at Lloyd's. We've talked about, obviously, the great thing about the capital model at Lloyd's. Obviously, since its beginning, has always been third party, lots of flexibility about capital. What's your ideal sort of balance? Because now there is so much optionality, particularly with London Bridge 2 and many other different ways of getting capital in and out. What's your thinking about it? Do you ever have a sort of optimal idea of how much would be sort of for my own account, for our own balance sheet, how much for my third party friends?
Yes, it's a great question. And
I suppose it depends, doesn't it?
It does, but it's something that was very relevant during the capital raise process and launch of the business. One of the things that we did find through that process, and I say we, my co-founder, my partner, Alex Winfield, who's co-founder in Oak, we worked alongside each other for the large duration of the capital raise process and the launch of the business. And one of the things that we found during that process, we engaged with multiple different private equity firms. And it was very clear from some of those early conversations that the appetite that private equity capital had for risk capital heavy businesses was a lot less than capital light businesses.
Yeah.
So that's something that over the course of that capital raise, we realized we needed to pivot to more of a hybrid capital model to be able to bring in different forms of capital. We're absolutely delighted that we were able to engage with Hamden, John Francis at Hamden, Argenta, Andrew Colcom, and James Sparrow at Alpha, and through them engage with an incredible group of investors, the names.
Yeah, they know everything. They've kind of been through everything. They've learned everything, most often the hard way as well. So, they're good people to know. And actually, of course, I think I had Alpha on the podcast recently, and it's been an eye-opener that, of course, you can get a lot of capital. If the three of them want to agree on something, then, you're off to the races, aren't you, at that point?
Yeah, it's a fantastic source of capital. The one thing I would say, the word third-party capital, it's an interesting term. We absolutely view, even though the names may not have equity ownership in the underwriting business, we certainly view them as core long-term partners in the business. And they obviously have modified freehold rights, tenancy rights within the capital stack.
It's equity-like, isn't it? In that you just have preemption rights and they're worth money in auction and that kind of thing. So it's sort of like equity, but it's not the same. But they probably view you as something that's a property. It's something they own. That ability for you to underwrite on their behalf is a property.
Yes, there is an ownership there. And we've really enjoyed our engagement with them throughout the course of this year and last year, both through the members' agents, but also at the High Premium Group and the Association of Lloyd's members, the various engagements there. Within the broader capital stack, we obviously have Bain Capital, our private equity partner, also provided the working capital for the business. And we have 2 trade capital providers there as well. So that's the capital stack for 2025. In 2026, we'll onboard some additional investors there as well. But as I think of it, what are the key attributes in terms of that broader capital balance within the business? The key components that I think about are permanence in terms of making sure that that continuity is there for clients and to make sure that we can provide that continuity year over year. The second component is scalability and the ability for us to be able to scale up if we need to or if we feel the opportunity is there in the market to do so. And then thirdly, I would say flexibility and that ability to have different investor types within the broader capital stack of the business is something that we feel is a key differentiator. And the Lloyd's framework, that capital flexibility within the funds at Lloyd's framework, ultimately that was the key mechanism for us to be able to launch Oak Global.
Yeah.
And the ability to bring these different capital investors together and ultimately then secure Bain Capital as a private equity partner who we're absolutely delighted with.
Well, I mean, it's a very good blue chip name to have sort of on your bottom of your business card somewhere, isn't it?
It is. And Elena Liskovska, who's our principal there at Bain, I realized it wouldn't have been necessarily easy for her. She goes to the IC because we were a de novo reinsurance startup, and it's very, very difficult to raise capital for that startup. And the trust that Bain have put in us is something that we're very much determined to deliver on.
What about the market itself? I mean, how is it? We look at the commentary, but how is it for you? How's it for Oak Global? Where are you seeing the best opportunities? Or, it seems like there's plenty of submission flow, people still offering you business and everything else. But obviously the commentary from all the conference season would be that, okay, it's a hard market softening. But otherwise, you're still happy generally with where the adequacy is and where the opportunity is, more importantly.
We are. And when we think about where the rates have come from, and obviously they were in an inadequate position in 2017 and where they've got to 2023, obviously we've come down off that peak a little bit. And as we go into 1/1, we can see that there's further pressure downwards as we think about the broader capital supply and demand dynamic in the industry. But even against the backdrop of what we expect that potential softening could look like, we do feel a strong rate adequacy across the market. We're looking to grow Syndicate 2843 from $400 million of premium for the 2025 year of account to $700 million for the 2026 year of account. So that's something that it's a large percentage increase, but it's from a relatively small base. When you think about our shares on programs,
I suppose sometimes in the ramp-up phase, some of it sort of feels like it's baked in. Is it sort of baked in, or do you have to go and write lots of new business to hit that plan?
I think the growth will come from a mixture of existing clients and existing placements where, let's say we had a 0.25 or 0.5% share in a treaty and we increased that incrementally. And then there are a number of clients that, just given time constraints, both in terms of when Oak was launched, but also the bandwidth of our team, we just didn't have a chance to service going into the previous renewals. So we've been to Monte Carlo for the first time this year. We've been to Baden-Baden for the first time this year. Team are out in SIRC this week, obviously PCI and the broader US conferences as well. So I think we've had a longer runway to be able to tell our story. I think we expect to have some positive developments from that, but we don't take anything for granted. And it's really important that we're able to articulate our value proposition to our clients and hope that results in them to continue to put their trust in us.
And something else new, obviously, Syndicate 1440. What's the story behind that? First question would be, why a separate syndicate, for example?
So Syndicate 1440, under the umbrella of the strategic business unit Oak Enterprise, will be focused on underwriting retrocessional business. And the retrocessional market is something that we have a long track record collectively in underwriting in that area. We have strong conviction in our ability to provide solutions for clients, generate strong returns for investors. So that's something that, as we think about areas that we engage in, is there demand for the product that we sell, and ultimately can we add value? And it's certainly an area that we believe we can. So why a separate syndicate? There are two reasons. So the first reason, from a capital standpoint, as you think about retro, the expected margin on retro business is more attractive than primary reinsurance. However, it comes with a greater level of volatility and it comes with a greater capital consumption as well.
Yeah.
So it does have a different profile to primary reinsurance and that diversified book that we have within Syndicate 2843. It's just 1 year ago where we were engaged with investors and we were selling a value proposition for that syndicate. So we didn't feel it would be appropriate to change that at this point, but rather give those investors the opportunity to invest in a new syndicate. The second component then is around the clients and the market. We want to send a clear signal to the market that we think of this as a long-term venture. It's not something we're just looking to dip in and out of. It's something that we feel we can generate long-term value in. And we feel that a standalone syndicate with dedicated leadership is something that reinforces that.
This really goes back to your reinsurance business philosophy, your retrocession business philosophy. I was reading your website, obviously, before I put all these questions together, and something jumped out was that some of the keywords were long-term support from clients, which I hope I got right, taken from your website. Is it right to say, therefore, you're more of a partnership type reinsurer, that you find the right clients, you think, well, that's the biggest job actually, is finding the people I know that I like. I'm underwriting the underwriter. I like them. I like the way they go about things. I can really relate to that. They're good people. I like their risk management. I like their appetites. They correspond with my own. Is that the right way of describing it? And therefore, once you've found that partner, you want to partner with them and make that a deep and broad partnership with that entity. Would that be fair? Because obviously others have said, well, no, I'll just look at the risk in front of me. If it's priced right, I'll take it. Because if you have the right partner, you know the things generally that are coming across the desk are priced right because they're the right partner, because that's what they do.
I mean, long-term partnerships, it's a core part of our value proposition. But then as we think about an underwriting model, I suppose you could think about that client management, two ends of the spectrum. One end of the spectrum is each individual deal comes in and an underwriter will underwrite it in isolation, regardless of the broader context of the relationship with that client, and it's purely based on the technical rate on that deal. The other end of the spectrum is that choose a client and underwrite all the classes of business that client is looking to buy products. We feel that neither end of that spectrum is optimal. And really, it's important for us to empower our underwriters to make technical decisions and to make sure we're very much focused on profitability. But we also want to have that culture and that structure internally where our underwriters are aware of the implications of the decisions that we make. And we engage with clients that are increasingly centralized in terms of how they buy reinsurance across multiple lines of business. So it's really important for us to show up in that way as well and to be aware of our connectivity to them. But certainly we are a client partnership focused business, but also underpinned with strong technical expertise and discipline in terms of how we underwrite the risk.
Obviously, some things like retro, they can be kind of here today, gone tomorrow, and very transactional in that sense, can't it? But at the same time, there's also retro players who are there consistently, because if you're going to buy retro, for example, that's what you want. I mean, that's what most people would want. They don't want someone to disappear just because there's been a hurricane.
Yeah, so probably the peaks and the troughs in the retro market are probably higher and lower than maybe some other markets, reinsurance, and then you drop down to insurance. So there's more volatility in performance, and there can be more volatility also in terms of expected return and how prices move. So it's really important to have that track record in managing that business and having an awareness of how to underwrite the cycle. What are the products to continue to write? What are the products maybe to avoid if the market was going to get to that level? But again, that's something that across our team, we feel we're in a great position to be able to provide that.
And longer term, obviously, you know Bermuda inside and out. I mean, if you've been there for 13 years, you know everybody you need to know and everybody knows you. Often reinsurance groups with operations at Lloyd's, they might end up with an operation on Bermuda as well, because they often seem to be very complementary to each other. Is that likely at all?
At the moment, I suppose we're not even 1 year in, and we're extremely proud of what we've been able to do, but we're very much focused on being a Lloyd's business. And as we think about crystal ball into the future, who knows? You know, the Bermuda market is a fantastic market with great businesses there, and there's a great marketplace. But really, as we think about our journey over the next number of years, we can absolutely achieve that within the Lloyd's market, and it's something that we'll continue to be focused on.
And another thing, obviously, if you're in reinsurance, you're obviously in London, where there's a huge amount of specialty insurance that you could write if you hired a team to do so. The largest reinsurers in the world all have specialty insurance operations these days, and they have done for a very long time, and as being complementary and not the sort of thing that would compete with any of their clients, for example. Again, would that be a complementary sort of string to the bow? Or would that be in medium-term strategy?
It could be something in the future, but I suppose I go back to when we were raising the capital for Oak Global and bringing that value proposition to investors. It was really important for us to have conviction in our ability to create strong returns. And when you look to the business mix, for example, you'll know that probably shorter tail in nature, which is reflective of my own background and track record in the business. So similar to something like casualty reinsurance or specialty insurance, for us to engage in either of those areas and appreciate very different, but we would need to bring in expertise to provide true leadership in those areas. And that's not something that we feel we need to do now. We feel really passionate about the ability to create franchise value in reinsurance and retro. And, that's very much our focus right now.
Yeah. It's a clean and simple idea that everyone knows what they're getting when they deal with you. There's no kind of channel conflict or any of that kind of thing to say, well, if I buy specialty reinsurance from you, if you're suddenly going to open up specialty insurance competing with me, does that make any sense? There's plenty of opportunity in reinsurance itself, and it's pure, and also it's easy to understand from everyone's point of view. But what do they get when they come and talk to you?
That's exactly right. And I think we've tried to be really clear in terms of what our risk appetite is. The lines of business that we're underwriting, we're not going to be able to solve all problems for clients. We don't have that suite across everything that they buy, but we are offering enough where we can be meaningful.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that we have expertise in delivering those areas to generate value for our clients and investors. And over time, that will broaden, I think. But certainly at the moment, we're very comfortable in terms of the lines that we write right now.
We're sitting in London. There's a whole revolution going on with the smart follow, which is, especially if you hadn't been here for 5 years, it would take you by surprise. So the numbers are getting quite substantial. How do you view that? Should we just rule that kind of thing out from a business like yours, or would it be wrong to rule anything like that out? I mean, I suppose, writing one of these things, one of the brokers does use the word treaty to describe their facility, for example. Is it anything like a treaty? Again, it's like a very big proportional treaty with a lot of diversification. Could you write it as a reinsurer?
Yeah, obviously, the concept of lead and follow, it's always been a core part of the Lloyd's market. And the ability for technology to drive more efficiency in that process is something that can add value.
I mean, these days, retro, if you can get that data to really hum through, whereas, of course, 20 years ago, it was so difficult. It's hard, if we go from an insured to an insurer, there's an element of error. Do we really know what we've insured? And then you reinsure that and you say, do we really know what we've reinsured? And then you're writing retro on that. You think, we're reinsuring the reinsurer of the insurer of the insured. You're bringing in huge amounts of error. Presumably, in a technologically improved state of affairs, you might be able to have the same data that the original insurer had. I don't know if that's true or not.
We may have
but in theory,
a bit to go.
I suppose, as we tend to the future, that is more likely to be the case than it was before.
Yeah, as you move further down the links in the chain, particularly as you get into retro, the level of data and that connection with the underlying risk, it does reduce, but ultimately then you need expected margin to be able to compensate for that and the risk expertise and underwriting expertise to drill down. But as data enhances, we are seeing improvements there. And I think that lead follow, certainly there's an element that can come through there as well. I do think it is critically important, regardless of whether it's a business in a lead position or follow position, to really understand that risk that's being assumed and the rate adequacy of that risk. Obviously, in a hard market, it's easier to take a following position. As the market gets softer, we've seen the playbook in the past. That's really where some of the inadequate performance can happen if those following markets are not really, really careful in terms of understand the risk. I think we're open-minded as a business in terms of how we think about risk and assume risk. Fundamentally, we are a reinsurance business and a retro business. We don't engage in any of the broker facilities.
No.
So it's something that we're very much focused on having that connectivity with clients.
Yes, even if you are following, you're on the sort of a traditional follow, i.e. you don't have to follow if you don't want to for a start. You still have your own view of risk. It's not something that's facilitized.
Yes.
Maybe from a capital point of view, these things make a lot of sense. That's the only other thing. They can make a lot of sense if they're overall decreasing your cost of capital and giving you a huge amount of diversification credit with just one stroke of one pen. It's quite seductive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're not seduced right now.
Not right now, yeah.
There are plenty of other people playing that game, and so I don't think you need to worry.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be plenty of capacity to be willingly seduced into that. Another thing that's been really booming is delegated authority, and always a big element of the Lloyd's market. Would it be right, again, to rule that out? It's not the sort of thing we should be associating you with, or because obviously there's very little delegated authority within reinsurance. There's the occasional exception, of course, but one presumes not.
Well, from an MGA perspective, I mean,
other than, of course, a huge amount of reinsurance capital has been supporting the hybrid carrier world as well.
Yeah.
So again, is that of any interest? It doesn't sound like it would be, but I'm probably, but I shouldn't put words in your mouth.
We view MGAs, some of the strongest underwriting talent, well, I would say on the insurance side, is sitting in MGAs, focused on niche products. And we do engage with a number of businesses providing that reinsurance capacity for those businesses. I would say, back to my point previously, it's really, really important to have not only the underwriting expertise, but also the operational capability to really have that strong touch with those businesses, to make sure that frequency of engagement is there from a control standpoint, not just in terms of the underwriting approaches, but also as we think about claims management, as we think about broader bordereau management.
It's all very well being sent a monthly bordereau, but if you don't have time to read it, then should you be in that business, I suppose? Because you need a sort of high service level, don't you? And to give them the insights that you should be able to have. If you're really ingesting that data properly, it would be nice to be able to tell them what you think about it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And we're really proud of where we've got to in terms of our overall infrastructure, but we're still quite a young business and we're still building out that. So we're very thoughtful in terms of the extent to which we move from treaty reinsurance to maybe supporting MGAs, doing it in a way that we can provide them that engagement, but not doing it in a way that's necessarily going to overburden us from an operational standpoint.
And now talking about operations, obviously it must be great when you've been in the industry long enough, everyone's been in the industry long enough to be frustrated by technology and then say, so well, goodness me, why have we got this clunky old system with a green screen in the basement somewhere? Now you've been able to have this luxury of being able to start in the middle of a great technological age. How much of a frictionless business have you been able to build between 2023 and now? Or is it still only theoretically possible?
Well, technology alongside talent and people, it's a core part of our business and how we think about realizing that vision over the next 5 to 10 years. So we think about technology, as you mentioned, we launched the business with a greenfield site. We don't have that legacy technical debt that other businesses would have, but that can happen quite quickly.
It doesn't take long.
It does not take long. So the way we're approaching technology is we're trying to be really thoughtful around what are the tools, how do we think about licensing, buying versus building from ground up, and thinking about those partners that we engage with. So as you think our underwriting workbench, we've engaged with Send that we've calibrated for our own operations. We license Moody's RMS. We think about catastrophe risk and cyber risk. We've licensed Alphins as a tool to think about our energy and terrorism aggregations at a risk level and at a broader event level. And we've also licensed a tool from Bondaval as we use to think about credit risk. Yeah. So there are a number of tools that we're using as we engage and underwrite our business. In parallel to that, we're also working with a development firm called For Theorem as we build out a cloud-based platform, technology platform in AWS. And we're looking to have that as an overlay in terms of bringing our own IP, in terms of how we knit these tools together and how we ultimately move that into a single pane of glass that our underwriters can use. Yeah. As we think about then, not just today, but over the next 5-10 years and think about AI, we recognize that AI is going to have a profound impact, obviously not just our industry, but on everything. We use AI today in instances that are more focused around operational efficiency. So a couple of examples might be around contract wording, how we think about NDAs and broader reinsurance contracts, how we can streamline digestion of those and making sure that we get to a landing on the right language. The second component then is in our development of developer code. And, that's come a long way from sitting down and writing each individual line of code. There's a huge amount of efficiencies that we've got from using several tools to do that. But from a really transformational value creation perspective, as we think about AI, we're spending a lot of time working with AWS and other partners to make sure that we have our data infrastructure set up in the right way, because there is a future in which we have our underwriting tools, but we can overlay agentic AI as a tool to be able to access those underlying tools and ultimately provide an interface to our underwriters. So it's not a vision that we would have something that would replace our underwriters, but it's something that we believe, could be a real differentiator as we think about creating value within our business.
Yeah, because it's amazing how quickly you realize, I wish I'd started on the right foot. You have all this data, are you putting it in the right buckets or lakes or whatever they are now? And of course, if you've not designed it right from the beginning, you can't really undo it. It's less valuable if you're not putting it in the right buckets.
Yes, it's a real challenge as a startup business, because there is a desire that's there to build tools that are really, really useful and to create tools that are helpful at that moment in time. But we need to balance that innovative instinct today with making sure that we have that data governance and structure so that what we build, that we're not going to end up with technical debt across the industry.
It's really difficult. It's something that I think must be one of the most difficult things of someone in your position is how much stuff do we build? Because it's great to build things that are cool, that are also, we think they're unique, or we can't see anything else in the market that we could license that would do this. But then you build it, and then, of course, after about year 3, you realize it's pretty obsolete now, and now it doesn't work with that new file format that everyone's using or whatever it is. And you think, oh, God, now we have to spend goodness knows how much just to sort of upgrade this. And, of course, if you'd bought third-party software, that's their job to upgrade it. That's why you pay them a license. And so you think, oh, God, are we a tech company or are we a reinsurer? And, it's hard because sometimes I'm sure if you've got the technical ability to write some of that code yourselves, it must be really difficult to know what's the right thing to do.
I absolutely agree. Take the underwriting workbench, for example, in terms of our engagement with Send.
You think you wouldn't have to build your own one of those?
Yeah, we could build that from scratch, but it probably wouldn't be as good, number one. And number two, it would be outdated quite quickly. So it makes more sense for us to engage with businesses that are going to stay on the leading edge. But that said, the IP that we can create is knitting together those tools and how we bring those together in terms of informing underwriting decisions, underwriting optimization, pricing, but then also how do we link that then to actual versus expected to the back end and how we think about performance in our business over time. So that's the vision in terms of where we're going. And we're spending quite a lot of time today making sure that we have the right infrastructure in place.
There's no such thing as the right infrastructure because obviously the future just keeps changing and keeps making whatever it was the right infrastructure 3 years ago look pretty out of date. But I think it's fantastic you're really thinking deeply about this because I don't think everybody does. So good luck because there's no right answer, I don't think, to any of these questions.
There's definitely not.
I suppose there's a right methodology, isn't there, perhaps?
It all comes back to people, doesn't it? Because if you have the right talent within the organization, and that collaborative spirit, open-minded nature of working together to think about what the best way to do it is. If we had brought in a large group of individuals from a single firm that worked together in a specific way, I don't think we'd have that dynamic.
Yes.
So it's something that we definitely feel day to day in the business. But as you say, it's not easy, but it's also looking at who are the external experts. So as we think about that collaboration with AWS, and Theorem, who are the businesses that have insights that are maybe not wired to the insurance and reinsurance industry, that maybe have a completely different perspective on how we can use data? I think that's something that we're trying to leverage as well.
That cultural attitude is so important because it always does come a point where you say, right, we need to actually rip this whole thing out and start again because something new. But you don't want to be sitting in the room with a whole lot of people who are absolutely wedded to that obsolete technology because that's just no good at all.
I think that's right. Yeah.
It'd be right to say it's as much about culture as about anything else.
Yeah.
I've sunk so much time and effort into this thing. We have to keep making it work, but actually maybe no, someone else has come up with a better idea.
Yes. And we're still at that early stage where we're obviously building as we move forward while we're underwriting our portfolios.
Yeah.
So we've invested a lot in underwriting across the board in the first year. And I think next year we'll continue to invest in technology and there's probably going to be an even greater focus on that area.
You said right at the beginning, there's a certain type of person who sort of knows that they're going to have to go and back themselves one of these days because you only got one shot. So there are different types of entrepreneurs. Some of the ones who they get described as serial entrepreneurs, usually by journalists like me, and then usually they don't like that because it sounds like they can't pay attention to anything more than 5 minutes. They're easily distracted. But there is an element of that with some entrepreneurs who are very much, what I really love is solving this problem and building that thing and making it, once it's really working and off and running, it doesn't need me anymore. And I've now found a new problem to go and solve. You one of those sort of people, or would you like to build something that has this sort of lifelong legacy to say, this will be the last place I ever work. I'm intending for this to be the last place I ever work.
At the moment, I'm taking each day as it comes. I have to say, our vision with Oak Global is to try to create something that has true franchise value and is a true global leader in this market, adding to those great leadership businesses already in the Lloyd's market and the London market. So that's really the vision in terms of where we want to get to. And we've talked about this being a decades-long project.
The thing about reinsurance is you can't be an overnight success in reinsurance. It's just not possible, is it?
No, we'll need to prove ourselves over a long period of time, but it is interesting. You know, we obviously see a lot of M&A activity in the market, and that's obviously natural when you do have excess earnings and maybe an inability to grow organically, and inorganic growth can obviously come into that to solve that. While that's happening, we're just getting to our 1-year anniversary, and I think we'll be very much focused on execution over the next number of years, because a lot of people have put their trust in us. Obviously, our clients, distribution partners, investors.
And there's 49 other people who've joined you.
And I say us, and I say because we're obviously all in it together at Oak, but it's something that we need to deliver. We've got off to a great start. I'm very proud of that, but we need to make sure we continue to do that over the next number of years, and let's see what happens then.
Absolutely. But obviously it sounds like M&A is not going to be on the cards for you as a buyer because you're too busy building, right? At the moment, I mean, it wouldn't be anything.
No, we've got enough things going on at the moment. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, hey, thanks so much for talking to me. I've really enjoyed it, because new businesses, reinsurance is as old as the hills, but there's so many different new ways of doing it. And it's really interesting to meet someone bringing a new sort of breath of fresh air into an old art. So good luck with everything. And time's moving very fast for you. So I need to talk to you at least in a year's time, probably less, because things would have moved on so much and we'll have loads to talk about. So thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Mark. Long time listener to the podcast, so it's a great honour for me, great privilege to be interviewed. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this programme. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry. The Voice of Insurance podcast is produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise-scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.